you stop pedaling, you fall. If you stop pedaling, you fall, right? Even if it is downhill, at the end of the day, you are going to fall. If you are not innovating enough, you are going to go back, not in front. This is part of cycling, this is part of the sports industry, this is part also of life. Thanks indeed to all of you. Thanks Andorra, Jordi, Andorra Business, and Research and Innovation. Thanks obviously to the GSIC, and a special thanks also to Omar Bosch, CEO of Haig Bureau, for his professionalism. We are here to discuss a little bit about where the cycling is moving forward, especially from an innovation perspective, which doesn't mean necessarily technologically. So I'm going to introduce briefly, because you are 5, and otherwise the time will consume. And we start by Angel Luis Fernandez. He's a global head of marketing at Bkool. He studied PR, advertising, and commerce at the University Complutense de Madrid, an executive master in digital business at ESADE. He used to work at Sony, Solera, part of virtual equity partner, ATM, Atlético de Madrid. And now he's the global head of marketing at Bkool, where he's leading the marketing department. We just launched the Giro d'Italia Virtual a few weeks ago. It's a great pleasure to have you on board here, Angel Luis.
Thank you.
Then we have Dani Buyo, CEO of Gran Fondo World Tour. He studied sports at Universitat Rovira i Virgili and business administration at Universitat Ramon Llull and ski area management at Colorado State University. He has worked, among other companies, at Facebook Fitness Festival, RAF Limited, etc. He's the CEO of Gran Fondo World Tour, race director of Andorra Bike Race, and sport and event director at Gran Valira Saide. Gran Fondo World Tour, co-owned by Gran Valira Saide, was created in 2015 and is composed by 20 events in 18 countries across the globe in 5 continents, and the virtual version is partnered with Bkool, Swift, Rouge, RGT, and Think Right. It's a great pleasure also to have you here, Dani. Javier Guillén, everybody knows him. Obviously, he studied law at the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, and since 2008, he's the managing director of Unipublic La Vuelta, one of top 3 cycling races in the world, and you have visited many, many times this beautiful country. Javier, it's a great pleasure to have you also here. Jack Haig, professional cyclist born in Australia. He has been a professional cyclist for 6 years. Jack was more interested in the first stage of his, let's say, sporting career in surfing, which is not a surprise being from Australia, but also in skiing. And also, yes, you can ski in Australia. But finally, and successfully, decided to proceed with cycling, with a very, very relevant and successful story, first as a mountain bike racer, and then moved to the road cycling. He lives in Andorra since 2016, good choice. And he, along with his wife, used to own a restaurant, very, very good restaurant, Orange Goat Cafe. His son was born in Andorra, so he's an Andorranian 6 months ago, so congratulations, Jack. And his current team is, as you know, Bahrain victorious, and he ranked 3rd place in last La Vuelta 2021, so congratulations for such a great accomplishment. And it's a great pleasure also to have you here. And last but not least, another guy from Australia, 2 Australians, oh my gosh, on the downside. Patrick Broe, he's the owner of Lanterne Rouge Media. He studied law and commerce at the University of Queensland, Australia, and spent some quality time at University Luigi Bocconi in Milano, Italy. Before, he used to work at Allen's as lawyer, as well as Horizon as legal counsel. Director of Lanterne Rouge Media, which owns Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel, more than 130,000 subscribers so far, and Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, the biggest English language professional cycling podcast in the world. They have license agreements with ASO, Omori Sports Organization, Unipublic, and Flanders Classic. So it's a great pleasure also to have you here.
Thank you.
So welcome all of you. And we can start actually asking a quite simple but very challenging question, which is, Recently, it has been quite popular among, the ecosystem to talk about e-cycling, right? And all the gamification of the cycling. You can cycling, outdoor, but you can also train indoor. Because at the end of the day, seasonality and localization are two of the main challenges to tackle for cycling from a business perspective. What are the main approaches and how do you approach indoor cycling or e-cycling? Maybe we can start with Luis.
Yeah, well, we are very happy that this thing is happening because that is true that the business of e-cycling or indoor cycling is growing quite a lot. I mean, of course, the pandemic it was a great contributor, but today we have seen that this trend is still ongoing, and the e-cycling is still growing up. I mean, you can do that for many reasons. Of course, you can do it if you are a professional cyclist, but you can also do it if you are just a fan. You can do it because you don't have time enough to go out. You can do it because the weather outside is not good enough. And you can do it as a way to travel away. I mean, you can stay here and travel any way in the world just through our simulators. You can climb Ordino from a small town in Portugal, for example, right? And then if you do that, maybe you can just realize that you would like to do it then for real when the weather is better. But also, our tool is a very good way for the professional teams, but also for the professional industry to engage with their fans, right? For example, today we are having some agreements with professional teams such as the Quick Step, and for them it's a very, very good way to engage with their fans because you can have Alaphilippe riding together with 200 people, talking to them, and being very close for their fans. So it's a very good way to engage with them. And also, for example, we are also working with Dani here and other races. For example, as Carlos mentioned before, we launched the Giro d'Italia Virtual just a few days ago. And it's also a way for the fans or for the amateurs to, to put themselves on their professional cyclist shoes or bicycles in this case. So that's the industry, that's the trend now, and we are very happy. And this is we are here people from all the ecosystem, so very different players, but there is a very good way to collaborate between all of us.
Thank you, Angel Luis. Dani, what's your perspective as you are the CEO of Gran Fondo World Tour?
Well, actually, connecting with Angel, when we was facing what's happening with the pandemics, our business model was focused outside, searching for events around the world to connect and put in our community. And since the COVID crisis, we decided, okay, we need to digitalize. This is something that is real, it's for everyone. But we changed completely the perspective, and we sit on a round table together with Movistar riders who are on the opposite side, on the eSports. They are playing League of Legends, FIFA and this, and we sit on the table and we see, okay, let's start on the other side of eSports and let's approach to cycling, okay, to really build an encouraging and an engagement content for fans. Why we did this? Because we was facing that the regular model that was functioning in simulation of sports on other sports like driving or others are to go as close as possible to the experience on real. Okay, then let's go to the other side. Let's start completely opposite with Movistar riders and discussing with the stakeholders like Bkool or the other platforms or teams like Movistar team with the creation of a team. We sit, we write, we was months working on this, and after few weeks, we decided to start here and go to be closer to cycling, but starting on the other side. This is our approach and our perspective because we was we are hearing a lot about the eSports, what is eSports, and who are growing, and we decided that let's take, what can we take from the eSports to grow, to enlarge our community, and really arrive to our fun and facing. Our fun, finally, it's averaging 43 years, which means that there are a mix of analogic and digital that, okay, they buy a trainer, they put it at home, but they are training and they feel alone because they are there alone, they don't have the opportunity to interact there. This is why we went to the other side, what we was learning from the eSports and this fun engagement, put together and give to our community of Gran Fondo to participate in Bkool or on other platforms, events where they have interaction and they really feel that are part of an international club and part of this circuit. And they can train here indoor to go outside to climb a Galibier or Tourmalet or another, but they train home to arrive there and be close. And of course, on the other side, they give the opportunity, like they did with the Xeonic Quick Stack team, to put together professionals with amateurs together in a really secure place. They can ride together and they can interact with them. Something that is really complicated on a real event where there are thousands and thousands of participants on the big cyclo-sportive events, and it's really complicated to control the security. Online and in the eSports, the safety is easy to control because everyone are at home.
Thank you, Dani. Javier, you have partnered with Ruby. Giro has been signed an agreement with Bkool and Tour de France with Swift. Is this something that is a must-to-have right now for a top 3 cycling race organizer? Is this complement? What's your vision?
Well, good morning, everybody. Our vision is a very useful activity. You know, for sure, to me, indoor cycling is an alternative to the road cycling in the way that we know. I mean, we always need road cycling and the professional riders and the professional racers, you know, before approaching to the indoor cycling. But once we have indoor cycling, I think it's a very good alternative for sure. In pandemic, I hate pandemic. You know, I'm not talking well about pandemic, but if there is one winner in the pandemic, is the bike. You know, because everybody could train at home and not and indoor cycling. The digital indoor cycling changed, you know, the way make our relation, because I'm not training alone. I'm training with a community of people. It's also a good. I think Jack could say better than me. It's a good alternative when you get a bad weather condition and you don't lose, you know, your days in the past. If the bad weather condition, then you don't go out and you lose that day. And also, as Dani said, it's a good way just for fun, but also to train your own shape, or to train, you know, what the stage. For example, if Lagos de Covadonga or QH or whatever, you can discharge unload the route and you can do it. So at the end, it's quite good. As you say, RCS and also are developing indoor virtual races. In Vuelta, we developed last year for Vuelta stages. It's a good recognition. You know, it's a good mirror where people could, you know, compete and compare to the professional people. But I say we always need, you know, the pure road cycling before approaching that. But as alternative, it's quite good.
Is this a revenue generator? Is this a revenue stream? Or this is just should be considered and conceptualized as an investment for the future and to better compete against other races?
It's a profitable activity. Otherwise, we don't do it. Otherwise, because, you know, we are a private companies. And, you know, I'm not regretting, and I'm saying I'm sorry because we try to make money. But, you know, now it's a first investment. We are only 2-3 years with this kind of activities, but I can tell you it's very profitable. Here, what is important is the brand. You know, it's claiming people to join. You know, it's not the same to be Giro, Vuelta, to the France than to be another, because at the end, people want to imitate your heroes, you know. But at the end, I can tell you, I confirm you, it's a profitable activity.
Thank you. Jack, from a pro cyclist view, is this something that you need to have in order to be better, to to be better prepared for the races, for example, when it rains or it's very, very cold outside? Is this also a revenue stream for you in the future in terms of sponsorship, etc.? What's your view?
In terms of training and preparation for races, the esports and the virtual platforms have become much more part of our regime, especially during the pandemic when we weren't able to ride outside. And we didn't, at the beginning, know how long we were going to be inside for. And I think it really accelerated the use of indoor cycling and esports. But also from a team perspective, I think before the pandemic, we had a lot of individuals using the platforms, but it wasn't until the pandemic that the teams actually started to realize how useful the platforms were. For example, Paris-Nice was the final race of the calendar last year, and there was some teams elected not to go to Paris-Nice and stay at home. And my previous team, Mitchelton Scott, was one of those. And while Paris-Nice was on, the team organized some virtual get-togethers on Zwift, and after the week that Paris-Nice happened, they found the team had more fan engagement from us doing the events on Zwift and being at home than if we'd participated in Paris-Nice. So I think there is definitely a place there to generate revenue for individual athletes, but also as teams. I think it will become more important for the teams to host events and have brand awareness for their sponsors on these platforms.
Thank you, Zach. Patrick, from a media perspective, is there any interest from media in terms of covering, let's say, e-cycling events, or this is just a complement to the real cycling thing?
Well, in terms of the amateur participation, which is developing well, which we've spoken about, going on to Bkool, Rouge, Zwift, going for a ride, even with the team, that's developing well, but in the actual esports is in its infancy because I think the UCI has recently signed an agreement to have an official esports world championships, but they need, to ensure integrity of competition, you need a physical location, you need a level playing field, you can't actually have people doing it from their home, and there's been they're still ironing that out a little bit. Esports is much more developed in Korea. They have huge stadiums where thousands of people come and watch, people playing still online, and once you do have that physical location, which maybe Andorra could be the place to develop an actual esports or e-cycling hub, and it would be counter-cyclical in the Northern Hemisphere winter as well, you can then ticket that, and it's an easier business model than, because you can't ticket outdoor road cycling, or at least not extensively. So I think I'd be wary. I buy and license the rights to outdoor races at the moment. I'd need it to develop a little bit more before I'd be interested in, I guess, licensing, I don't know, a UCI World Championships e-event. I'm not sure how much interest there is. I guess the UCI will pilot that themselves on their social media.
Thank you, Patrick. Let's talk a little bit about fan engagement. Engagement, I would say, is not very, very useful unless you are able to monetize this engagement in whatever way and for whatever reason, not only economically, but also maybe socially. But in cycling, it is not like other sports when you can identify clearly idols, clearly to buy a shirt, for example, and to wear the shirt. Even ad hoc, personalized shirt. Actually, you can follow races. You can follow the cycling as a sport. You can follow specifically some of the races. You can follow teams, which is, I would say, more a question mark. Or you can follow cyclists, such as yourself, for example, Jack. You're speaking how to monetize all this engagement, especially, as Javier said, due to the collateral effects of COVID-19 and the pandemic, the cycling, interest has grown very, very substantially. How to monetize all this engagement? Maybe we can start by Patrick and then...
Well, so I only have digital delayed rights, and I've looked at how much interest is there in road cycling, and yes, it's not going to have as many views as the Super Bowl, as the FIFA World Cup final, But in fact, there is a huge amount of interest in road cycling across now South America, North America, and UK developing, in Australia as well. But still, obviously, the heartlands are Belgium, Spain, Italy, France, and the Netherlands. I think, from my perspective, reusing the live rights over and over again in smart ways with the input of the riders is an easy way to monetize the race. So, for example, Andorra bid for the Tour de France Stage 15, and that was held in Andorra. Andorran resident Sepp Kuss won. He's American, but he won the stage, and he's been living in Andorra for a while. Seems quite ingrained in the community. Perfect scenario marketing-wise for Andorra, and yet there's not that story being told on social media after the fact about, maybe you do an interview with Kuss, you have a shot of him in Andorra where he lives, you show some of the race as well. It doesn't need to be a Netflix-level documentary. I think that's another obstacle, is sometimes big corporations think to get a lot of engagement, it needs to be high production value, high cost. I can tell you, you don't need that level for something like YouTube and social media. And so, I don't know, is that Andorra's responsibility, the Tour de France's responsibility? At the moment, it's people like me, I guess, filling that gap, where I'll call him up, or like last year, I called Jack up and say, do you want to talk about doing indoor training and how that you're dealing with that? And then I produced that. But I feel like for it to be most effective, if La Vuelta, and they're obviously a corporation linked to ASO, if they take ownership of that and push that content, like the NFL, NBA, Premier League all do now, then they can generate significant revenue from digital media to cover, obviously, as Mr. Guillén would say, that the large costs for running a live cycling race on the open roads.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. What's your vision in terms of how to move from peer engagement to the monetization of this engagement?
I think it's to get more engagement from the mass participation into the professional side, because I always talk to people about, in football, you don't see people kicking the football around with homemade jerseys on, or without a jersey of FC Barcelona or Real Madrid. But in Gran Fondo events, how many people do you see wearing the professional jersey of Team Bahrain or De Kona Quickstep? And I think there's a very large disconnect between the professional side of the sport and then the mass participation side of the sport. And I think if we're able to more align the two, and the engagement from the mass participation side, I think, is a big revenue generator. And there is so many people now participating in cycling that probably do not have interest in the professional side. And if we can help align those visions, you get much more fan engagement, because you have created so many new fans of the sport. But I think if you did a survey in a Gran Fondo event, the amount of people that have a favorite cyclist or a favorite team or follow a certain event, you probably wouldn't have that many people answering those questions. They enjoy the sport for the sport. So I think to get more fan engagement, it would also help to have a bit more of a sustainable business for the professional side. I think every single year you see teams struggling to continue, and then you can't have like Miami Heat. That's Miami Heat every single year. Yeah. But in cycling teams, the name of the team changes year on, year out sometimes. There's not very many teams that have had a long-standing name. For example, Movistar is probably the longest team with that name. So it's very hard for a fan to follow a cycling team. So I think it's an interesting thing that we could try and work together more between the mass participation and the professional side to create a bit more of a synergy there.
Do you think, just
talking about monetary, we are already, all of us are getting money from this, because we as a platform, of course, we get paid from our subscribers, and they pay a monthly subscription. So we are getting money from that. Then for example, the properties, depending on the type of agreement, Giro d'Italia is getting money together with us, or we can become into sponsors of La Vuelta a España, or Gran Fondo is engaging with their fans, and then probably are getting more participants on the races, right? So at the end of the day, we are getting money from this. We are also becoming a sponsor of professional teams or professional riders. Today, we are already monitoring this. Of course, we can make this grow, and that's the idea, but it's happening today. And even though we are on the first steps of this business, this is happening, and all of the stakeholders are getting a benefit from this.
Do you think, Javier, that regular cycling, not elite amateur cycling, are following top races such as La Vuelta, one of the top 3, or teams and or pro cyclists such as Jack? What would be the ranking?
Well,
and how to monetize?
But it's what you say, you know, we are already monetizing the market in a very special industry, because as Jack is saying, you know why there is not a good identification between the professional and the amateur? Because all the amateur things are better than the professional, you know, in this case. Because here we got something is very special. I only see in cycling and in running. I can compete against you. In soccer I can't, because soccer is the joystick. You know, basketball is the joystick. But in cycling I can. So if I can compete against you, I cannot wear the same jersey than you. I have to wear my own jersey. So this is something that maybe we can power, you know, in terms of motivate people to do that. But in terms of monetizing, there are many things. For example, Bkool. We start working with Bkool a time ago. The obsession was to reproduce the stages, you know. And now you can extend Tourmalet and Gliru from your home, but you have to pay some money, you know, to have that data. Another thing to me, it's very important in terms to compare and realize that we are not professional, you know, is to introduce the data of the stages, you know. For example, you know, how long it takes to ascend Angliru, to ascend Tourmalet. This is something is very, very important to me. Something that the industry could work. I don't belong to the industry, and I don't want to suggest anything. But maybe, you know, in the presentation of the stage, you know, more live presentation. You know, it's now it's very, very, very virtual. You know, we are not real. I don't see a real human being on the screen. So I like to see, you know, the mountains, or maybe this is something, and maybe you can get some money from the cities, you know, saying today, hey, if I introduce how nice is Lagos de Covadonga, maybe Asturias is paying to you some money.
Something,
you know?
that is already happening too. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we have been talking with Andorra and Giro d'Italia and Vuelta a España. There are sport events, but this is a advertising place for the countries and cities. And so we are the same thing too. Yeah.
And another very important thing, this is a worldwide activity. You know, this is not focused on Italy, Spain, or France. This is worldwide. So wherever part in the world, you can, you know, join the platform and the community. So answering to you, Carlos, industry is monetizing already, you know, all possibilities.
Excellent. Your case in terms of Gran Fondo.
I think that we can identify four lines on this framework, okay, on this playground that we have, and these 4 lines are represented here, okay, because actually on the first line, on the first row, we can identify teams that we have here represented. On the second one, when we talk about eSports, we identify games, or here is pedaling platforms that we have here, Bkool representing, okay. Then we have the tournaments and events that we are representing in professionals, non-professionals, and amateurs, okay. And then we have the diffusion platform that we have represented, okay. All this, we are on the same playground, and we are playing to the same, and we are working together with joint ventures with them, or with events, or with diffusion platform, to really create this value and convert this to money, okay? And if we go back, as I said before, to eSports, it's already done there with the NFTs and tokens, funds, where they buy to enjoy the experience. Our work to do together, the 4 of us that we are seated here, is to create this product where they will be ready to pay, and this is where we find the money, okay? We will create more subscribers for them, we will create more content for media, we'll create interesting events, and we will create interesting events for professional teams to get connected with me that I am at home, alone. And we will feel, instead I am in South America or on the other part of the world, that I am riding together with Haig, okay? And this is the challenge that we have now, okay? We are working, but we are starting now to sit on the table and work together to really create this, because finally there are a piece of pie of business on the cycling. Sales of bikes are growing, and content consumption are growing. Okay, if we are able to create good content supported by platforms and by diffusion media, okay, fans will be able to pay for this, to participate for virtual events, and of course to real events, because people want to participate on real events and on virtual events.
Thank you, Dani. We are very, very short of time. I will ask Lola, please forgive me 5 more minutes, okay? Thank you. Last question. How do you perceive, or what's your vision of cycling in 2030? Several sports, among them football, are trying to reinvent because they know and they are knowledge that the audience and the interest for football is, I would say, slightly declining in a traditional format. It is necessary to do something like this with cycling for the next, and I give you each 45 seconds, okay, only?
Well, I think the first thing cycling needs to accept is that it's probably an unrealistic ask for someone to sit and watch 5 hours of each Grand Tour stage in full every day, unless you're a journalist like me. And my dream in 2030 is that ASO, Unipublic, RCS, and Flanders Classics create an OTT service so there's no more fragmentation of the race rights. There's one place for the consumer to go and see the full stage if they want, a 20-minute highlight, a 5-minute highlight, owned by the race organisers, and then, so you don't have situations where, I'm subscribed to this service, but they don't have this great race. And yeah, I think that's my dream, that it's more streamlined, and also like the NBA who have Game Pass, like the NFL who have their own Game Pass OTT service. I think with GCN Plus that produced it, a private third-party company, but I still think the race organisers themselves are in the best position to create a joint venture and have their own for the consumer and serve up various products within that, and even then they can partner with Gran Fondo World Tour, with Bkool within that platform. I think Dani mentioned something like a one-stop shop for all these things.
Okay, thank you, Patrick. Jack?
I think the professional side will probably get more integrated with the eSports side of cycling, but I also expect that maybe the events or the stages will maybe become a tiny bit shorter or more dynamic, because as Patrick was saying, in the generation that we live in now, we have everything on our phones and everything is instantaneous, and maybe more circuit style racing that is more interesting and more dynamic at the moment. But I think we need to be careful not to lose what cycling is. And cycling is doing a Grand Tour, or the professional side of it at least. So it's trying to find that balance between keeping fans interested in the sport when everyone is used to such instantaneous information, and how we can balance that with the eSports side of it as well as the professional side of it, and having fan engagement stay when they can pull out their phone and they can see everything on TikTok and Instagram and a cycling event's 5 hours. So.
Javier?
Well, first of all, cycling is not in crisis. Cycling is growing up a lot, and we don't need to reinvent anything. Yeah. Because we are in a very good shape. But the problem is when you try to reinvent, over something that doesn't need to be reinvented. I share the opinion of Jack. We need to try to be more dynamic, but we can't lose our essence. So to me, it's not the way that we are doing, it's the way that we approach the spectator, especially the young spectator, because it's true that young people is consuming in a very quick way. So to me, what we do is not a matter of the SM, because at the end we need 3-4 hours states, we need big calls, we need epic. You know, this is what professional cycling is identified by the epic. Yeah, I'm talking about what Jack and I are doing, you know, or especially he's doing. I'm organizing that all. So how we introduce that, you know, in a panorama where all the TV platforms are changing, you know. So to me, the future is getting through the TV production. You know, this is the challenge for the future, and we have a long way to cover. You know, how we produce in terms to show that epic, you know, to approach better the effort that they are doing day by day. To me, that's the challenge, not if we should change something in cycling. So far, we don't need.
Thank you, Javier.
I don't want to be pretentious, but it's true that we don't need.
Thank you.
Well, I
Again,
agree with
I have not said that cycling is in crisis at all. Actually,
no. I agree
on
with
the
Javier that
contrary.
we are not in
Dani.
crisis. We are in a boost of the business now, and I think that the key for the future is how to find a way to work together, the stakeholders that we are on this side and even on the other side, to use this to create valuable content to be consumed and to be used, to take this part of the business that we have. And we are talking about cycling, but we can sit 4 other persons here talking about triathlon, about running, and it's happening the same on this industry. Then I think that the future key is how to put together and do joint ventures and joint forces together between the stakeholders to multiply for 10, not 1 and 1, no, for 10, the synergies and the opportunities to take business on this.
Thank you, Dani. Last but not least,
I mean, I
Luis.
agree, of course, with all of them. There is a big wave of cyclism bust, and this is about taking the most of this wave. It's about to create and maintain ways to engage with fans for being on, or for maintain the wave the longest. It's about the ways to maintain this is cycling, is social media, is things like, for example, I love fantasies, and this is other way, or creating audiovisual pieces like documentals, things like that. Everything of these kind of things are all from fashion today, and this is what cyclism should be doing, no? Creating more. It's about creating some buzz about cyclism, like something else, right? To take the most of this fun fan generation, right? Like, imagine the life or history of big cyclists, things like that, that today are things that are working.
Okay, thank you. So unfortunately, we don't have much more time. So thanks indeed the 5 of you for your time and also generosity in sharing with the audience all your knowledge, opinions, and comments about the e-cycling, about fan engagement, about where the cycling is going forward. And remember the first quote that we started this session: if you stop pedaling, you fall. So despite the fact that it's not in crisis at all, but it is also healthy to think about the future. Thanks indeed, and please join me with a big and warm applause to give them.